Good day, Totem here, and welcome to Stoneburst Totems build guide. This build is very good league starter, or for playing in Soul Self-Found or Hardcore League, because I'm not using any expensive items or rare unobtainable uniques, just self-crafted or drop gear. So I tried almost every spell that you can possibly play with Totems on Soul Self-Found, and Stoneburst is definitely my favorite, because of the way you can scale the damage of the skill against single targets, and you know, that's a channeling spell and Totems are very good at channeling. So let's talk about pros and cons of the build. As for the damage, our Totems have over 1 million DPS each, which is over 4 million serious DPS with 4 Totems. And this is with mediocre SSF rare gear. Yes, it is possible to increase the damage using the Soul Mantle, Viridius Veil and Self-Flagellation combo, but in this guide I wanted to show how good the build is for budget league start or for Soul Self-Found playstyle. The main defense of the build is huge life pool. On level 94 it's around 10,000 life plus mana with 40% Might of a Matter. On top of that we have 2000 energy shields and 3000 shields from Arcane Cloak, which is up most of the time, because we take a lot of skill effect duration on passive tree. Also, since most of the gear is rare, it's not hard to get immunity to elemental ailments, so we never can be shocked, frozen, etc. Chaos resist is not the problem either for the same reason. Also, we have minimum endurance charges crafted on jewelry, and enemies are doing 10% less damage because of the taunts from Decoy Totems. And the last layer of defense will be 60% block and spell block chance with glancing blows. I know the effectiveness of glancing blows is debatable after the nerf, but since we also scale damage and mana regen with block chance, I still think it's worth it. What about drawbacks of the build? It is not the best clear speed in maps, but at the same time it is not the worst. Stoneburst skill needs some time to ramp up the damage, that's why it is maybe slower than, for example, Arc or Freezing Pulse Totems. What I like about Stoneburst Totems though is that we don't need to spend half a minute trying to kill map boss or a tanky rare mob in the map. Some people might find this build clunky to play because of the amount of actions we can do in order to increase the damage. To reach maximum potential we use Totems, Mines, Brand and Self-Cast from time to time. But personally I think of it as an advantage, because you don't have to combine all mechanics all the time, but when you fight in a boss and you have a couple of seconds of safety between slams from a boss, you can help your Totems with the damage. And the last drawback is Totem survivability. Sometimes they just die too much, but I feel like that's the problem of almost every Totem build. Traps, mines and now minions, they all have a notable that makes them immune to damage for the first 4 or 5 seconds after being summoned. But Totems don't, so we have to keep resummoning them or invest heavily in their life and resistances. But even then, it is a good idea to avoid bad map modifiers for Totems. So speaking of map mods, in theory the build can complete maps with any combination of mods. But there are several modifiers that are very annoying to run, so I would recommend rerolling them. First, Elemental Damage Reflect. This modifier can be done if you really need this, but Totems will be killing themselves all the time, so yeah, very annoying. Same with Monster's Skill Chain Several Additional Times modifier. If you'll get a lot of projectile mobs in a map, they will shred Totems. Modifier players cannot regenerate life, mana or energy shields is also a bit annoying, because we don't leech, so the only way to restore life and mana will be using flasks. And of course, it is never a good idea to roll 3 or more damage modifiers on a map, but if you have to run such a map, then don't be hasty and always place Totems in front of you. Now let's take a look at the passive tree. We just take all the life and mana nodes around the Templar area to increase not just our health pool, but also damage and area of effect. Because the more mana we have, the more flat damage we will get from Arcane Cloak, and we have this Ascendancy passive called Sanctuary of Thought that gives us 100% increased area of effect and more energy shields with enough investment. But unlike self-cast Archmage builds, we don't need to scale mana indefinitely. Hitting this 5000 mana mark is a good threshold to stop on the mana investment and start scaling life only, because we hit a cap on area of effect from Ascendancy. And since we have 40% of our damage taken from mana before life, life still should be bigger than mana pool. Ideally, you want 7.5k life when you have 5000 mana, but it's very hard to get that much. Though if somehow you got too much mana, you're free to remove some mana points here and take this Profane Chemistry life wheel. What else do we have on the tree? These two mana clusters, Dynamo and Arcane Capacitor, they're both insanely good for using Arcane Cloak. And we take both skill effect duration clusters, which also helps with arcane cloak uptime, but mostly for doubling the damage from stone burst. How exactly does it work, we will talk in the skills section of the video. The Divine Wrath notable helps with converting stone burst damage fully to lightning. Keystones that we take are obviously Ancestral Bonds and Might of the Matter. Then we also take Elemental Overload, because this is a non-crit build. Why going crit is a bad idea, we'll talk about that in the section of the video that is called Why Don't We? Also we take all the block points with glancing blows, which I think is good in this build, because we use a Shaper Influence shield for +1 totem, and we can also roll life or mana recovery on block there. It is kinda hard to roll such a shield on SSF though, but even if you don't have a recovery on block on shield, from glancing blows we still get some more mana regen from Mystic Bulwark notable, and more damage from Arcane Swiftness notable, which is hands down the best passive we can anoint on Amulet. This notable is amazing, it gives us cast speed, a bunch of damage, ailment avoidance, stun avoidance and block chance. It costs 2 silver oils though, which is hard to get at the start of the league. So normally before I can afford this, I anoint Ironwood notable for big totem resists, and it's really cheap. The last keystone is Supreme Ego, and we only take it when we get the Essence Worm Ring. That way we increase effectiveness of Wrath Aura by 50%, so 10% more damage overall. And we don't resolve mana anyway, so no drawback from this keystone. Since totems don't have their own offensive properties and they only benefit from damage that we get on our Hierophant, the part that says auras don't affect allies is irrelevant for us. Let's take a quick look at our ascendancy. Like almost every totem build, we wanna take Pursuit of Faith and Ritual of Awakening for +1 totem, amazing totem placement speed and duration, 30% more damage and good life and mana regen. And then we take Divine Guidance. It is also great for damage through Transfiguration of Mind, and increases our total health pool. Sanctuary of Thoughts gives us 100% increased area of effect and 1200 energy shield. Bandit choice is Kill Them All for 2 extra passives, because we don't go crit, so we don't need a Lyra. And on Pantheon, I recommend getting Soul of Lunaris for the chain immunity, because we always have totems nearby, and if we don't have chain immunity, enemies that attack a totem can chain the damage towards us with some abilities. As a small power, you can choose whatever you want honestly. I normally take Soul of Shakira for some extra chaos damage mitigation. I also have leveling trees down here, but we will talk about that in the leveling section. Let's talk about gear now. As I said before, I wanted to make a League Start friendly and Soul Self-Found friendly build, so most of the gear is just rares, but we still do good damage with it. The only unique we have is Essence Worm Ring, which gives us a free aura. In combination with Supreme Ego Keystone, we get 30% more damage from a single gear slot. This ring is not that rare, and as far as I know it is cheap in Trade League. Even at the start of the league it's around 5 Chaos Orbs. But in SSF you can get unlucky and not drop it. The only more or less deterministic way of farming Essence Worm is to farm divination cards called the Penitent, which gives a random unique unset ring. And the only map where you can drop this card is Cells, which is gonna be only tier 5 in Ultimatum League. I never do that myself, I just wait until Essence Worm will just drop. So before you'll get Essence Worm, just use a similar ring to our second one, just life, mana and resistances, and craft minimum endurance charge when you unlock the recipe. Now let's just go through the list. As a weapon we use either Wand or Scepter. The best implicit is on Profane Wand, 14% cast speed. Since we don't get too much cast speed from passive tree, getting a lot of cast speed on weapon is important, but not mandatory. Also it is possible to roll or craft big mana on weapon. So if on level 90 you still didn't hit the 5000 mana threshold, then the easiest way to get more mana is to craft it here. On Prefix we also want spell damage or lightning damage, and +1 to spells or lightning spells. If you manage to get all these affixes without crafting bench, then great, you have an amazing weapon, and you can craft 5% chance to deal double damage as a suffix from crafting bench. We want shield with Shaper Influence because we can get +1 totem here. In order to get this roll, we need at least item level 70 Shaper Shield with any base. Better not Dexterity base because we don't have much dex from tree. So the most important here is +1 totem mod, and even if you don't have anything else, just craft life from bench and you're good to go. Other stats to look for in shield is recover 5% life when you block or recover 5% mana when you block. These are also Shaper Influence modifiers that have item level 68 requirements. It is also possible to get spell damage and cast speed on intelligence-based shields if you want to min-max, but just getting life, mana and resist is good enough. Helmet is just any rare with life, mana and resists, and we craft chance to avoid elemental ailments from the bench. Upgrade would be getting % of physical damage from hits taken as fire damage or lightning or cold, for better physical damage reduction. You can get that on Warlords, Crusader or Redeemer helmets respectively. There is an amazing helmet enchant from Labyrinth that says Stoneburst has a 15% chance to create an additional orb. This would give us 15% more damage, but it is really hard to get the right helmet enchant in SSF, even with buffs to Lap and Ultimatum. So in Path of Building, this enchant doesn't account for our final DPS of the build. Body armor, same, life, mana, resist, and crafted chance to avoid ailments and stuns. If you have Shaper base, you can also get 15% of physical damage from hits taken as cold or lightning damage. On gloves, and this is important, we need 25% physical to lightning damage conversion. To get this roll, we craft Crusader Influence gloves with item level 71 or higher. Also, instead of crafting Crusader gloves, it is possible to just drop them in Temple of Etsuatl, because there is an incursion prefix that gives you 25% conversion with some damage to attacks. These are the easiest ways of getting conversion, but also there is a Watch's Eye modifier for Wrath Aura that gives conversion. This jewel drops from Elder and Uber Elder and rolls very randomly, so I wouldn't recommend farming it on SSF. Another way of getting conversion on gloves is to unveil that recipe from gloves from Syndicate members. But since we also want to craft elemental ailment avoidance from bench, we would have to multi-mod the conversion and lose one suffix this way. Boots, it is important to craft Elder Influence base to get increased skill effect duration. We only need 10% duration, so any roll will work. Item level requirement for that is 68. And the rest of the stats for boots, life, movement speed, resists. The Lap enchant on boots is pretty impactful. There are 3 good enchants here. The best one is damage penetrates 10% resist if you haven't killed recently. Since we don't kill enemies, it counts as our totem skill on them. This buff will be active all the time. The second best option is adds 160 lightning damage if you haven't killed recently. Also almost permanently gives us extra damage, just not as much as the penetration one. And the third enchant, 120% increased crit chance if you haven't crit recently. This helps with proccing elemental overload faster on bosses. Amulet, it is better to use Dex base, that way we solve problem with Dex. We want life, mana, resists, and I like the minimum endurance charge craft like on rings for physical damage reduction. This Shaper modifier, gain up to 15% of physical damage as lightning damage, is very good. And since we want to farm Shaper maps anyway for the shield, you might get an amulet too, and then craft this mod. Anoint is gonna be Arcane Swiftness notable for clear and 2 silver oils. Belt, just generic Stygian Vice with life, mana, and resists. Also getting reduced flask shares used would be good here. Abyss Jewel that we put in belts, again life and mana. Also chance to hinder enemies on hit will work for totems, and since the hit rate of Stoneburst totems is insane, they will always slow enemies down. And on jewels, if possible, we want totem resistances with increased life, mana, or even totem life. It's easier to get that on Crimson Jewel. Flasks, I normally use Instant Life Flask, then Enduring Eternal Mana Flask. On Mana Flask, since it only uses 7 charges, we want the best immunity. I think Curse Immunity suffix is the best here. But you can also craft Stun Immunity from Crafting Bench. Although you'll have to unveil this recipe first, so you'll need an unveiled Cindy Swallow Urn unique flask, which drops from Syndicate Mastermind. Or you can buy it on Trade League, but make sure it is unveiled. So it is only 50% stun avoidance, but we have 30% more on body armor and 20% from Arcane Swiftness Amulet Anoint, together 100% full stun immunity. On utility flasks, I think it is better to roll reduced charge use prefix, and in combination with Arcane Chemistry notable, it is gonna be better flask uptime. And on suffixes, on utility flasks we probably want bleed immunity, movement speed and poison immunity. Since we're already immune to elemental ailments, we don't need freeze, shock or ignite removal. Let's get to the skill review section. So how does Stoneburst work? When our totem starts channeling the skill, it creates orbs that last for 1.2 seconds each. Orbs when created start jumping every 0.4 seconds. So if we don't scale duration at all, each orb will do damage 3 times, 1.2 divided by 0.4 seconds. We can't modify the frequency at which orbs jump, but we can make them last longer. If we have at least 33% increased duration, then each orb will last for more than 1.6 seconds, and it can jump 1 additional time, so it will hit 4 times instead of 3, which means 33% more damage overall. If we hit another duration threshold, 67%, each orb will jump and hit another time, and so on. That's why we take all the skill effect duration from passive tree. We get 90% duration from 2 duration wheels on tree. That means that we need 10% more duration to hit a third threshold, 100% duration. The easiest way to get that is to craft Elder Influence Boots. There's an increased duration suffix on item level 68 plus Elder Boots. Another way of getting this 10% duration is to use Anomalous Quality on Stoneburst gem. It is exactly 10%, but it is much harder to get level 21 gem that way. A third option is to anoint Entropy Notable. This is still worse anoint than Arcane Swiftness, but it is cheaper, only in Crimson Oil, so might be a good option before you get to Silver Oils. And the last option to get 10% duration is to use Efficacy support on Stoneburst, but this is a bad idea because we still get more damage with other supports. And these supports are Spell Totem, Elemental Focus, Control Destruction, Lightning Penetration, and Infused Channeling. I forgot to mention one thing. When we stop channeling the Stoneburst skill, so basically when Totem dies, all the remaining orbs explode with damage that is also scaled with duration. And that's very good because in Mouse, when we resummon our Totems and the previous one dies, it will probably still kill an enemy that way. Next, we want Wave of Conviction mines with Charged Mines. Using these mines increases the damage by a lot. Also, Charged Mine support generates frenzy charges for us. I talked about benefits of using mines in my other video with Totem tricks, I'll leave the link in the description. Then we use Stone Brand to proc 40% more damage from Elemental Overload Keystone, and we apply Conductivity Carson hits and insta-kill enemies with 10% life with Calling Strike support. Next up, Arcane Cloak, linked to Arcane Surge and Second Wind. We just put this skill on left mouse button, and don't forget to check Always Attack Without Moving option. That way we will have automatically buff on most of the time, since we have 100% increased skill effect duration, and Dynamo passive clusters reduces the cooldown and quickly regens mana spent on the skill back. Big mana cost of Arcane Cloak also helps proccing highest level of Arcane Surge, and the duration is enough for 100% uptime of the buff, so we don't need low level Arcane Surge and Flame Dash anymore. I also have Void Sphere here linked to Second Wind, just because I really like this skill, and it helps in indoor maps to disable enemies as you go through a doorway. Void Sphere doesn't help with bosses at all, so we can also use Vile Righteous Fire for good boost of damage from time to time, and the duration on it is also gonna be solid since we have a lot of skill effect duration. This falling is socketed into our Elder Boots with built-in level 15 increased duration support, so the duration of Arcane Cloak and Void Sphere or Righteous Fire will be even bigger. Next skill is Self-Cast Stoneburst linked to Infused Channeling and increased duration supports. We channel this skill for only 0.6 seconds and we get 17 seconds of infusion buff. This buff really increases the damage of Totems, because Stoneburst has both physical and lightning tags, so Infusion gives us 10% more physical and 10% more lightning damage. As you can see, this is 17% more damage total. And if we change the channeling skill to pure lightning, Lightning Tendrils for example, this buff would only give 10% more. So this is very easy source of damage, because again, the duration of infusion buff in this build is 17 seconds, and to get that you just need to channel this skill for 0.6 seconds every now and then. Then we have double Decoy Totem setup. They taunt enemies to attack them and help us get more damage and regen from Ritual of Awakening and Ascendancy passive. Also, taunted enemies do 10% less damage to other targets. I also talked about this in the Totem Tricks video in the description. By the way, it would be good if you can get Diversion Quality on Decoy Totem, because it gives them 20% life regen, huge. And also we have Flame Dash with Second Wind and Wrath Aura in Essence Worm Ring. If you don't have this ring, just don't use any auras. Now that we know all the skills we use, let's figure out the quote-unquote boss rotation of the build. Right before the boss, channel Self-Cast Stoneburst for half a second to get infusion buff. Then I like summoning double Decoy Totem to destruct the boss. Then we summon 4 Stone Boss Totems, use Stone Brand to curse enemy and proc Elemental Overloads. Then throw and detonate some mines to apply exposure and maybe get some frenzy charges. And then just keep throwing mines without detonating them to apply double damage taken aura to the boss. I know it maybe sounds too complicated for a Path of Exile build, but once you get used to that playstyle, it becomes very straightforward. If you didn't get scared by this skill rotation, let's take a look at leveling. For the leveling, I created these different passive trees for different levels. Also in items section, I created this Lake Start leveling gear set with mediocre low level rares so that you could see how much damage and life you might have at different stages. Don't forget to change your level up here for that. Let's see this level 19 tree. We start at Templar and go towards some damage points, taking life and damage on the way. You can use any spell you want until level 33 when we go fully Stone Boss Totems. I left gems that I like using while leveling, so Stone Blast Mines until level 16. And don't forget to support it at level 4 and 8. Then Frostblink and Flame Dash with level 1 Arcane Surge. I put Vitality Aura here from level 10, because it's really good and helps with regen early on. We remove it at around level 43 when we go for Might of Meta Keystone. And on level 12 we get our main skill, Storm Burst, but it's only gonna be one totem until level 33. So we need more damage, Storm Brand for example. Against Merveil boss we have one Storm Burst totem, Storm Brand and Storm Blast Mines. Storm, 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 we need more Storm skills. At level 16 I swap Mines for Self-Cast Wave of Conviction. And at level 18 don't forget to fully convert the damage of Storm Burst to Lightning with the support gem. By the way, Storm Charger boots help with conversion, so if you somehow get these boots, just equip them and then you can swap physical to lightning support to control destruction. That would be more damage for sure. On the tree, after Divine Judgment, we rush Elemental Overload and some good damage points here with life and mana. And around level 33, we get first Ascendancy points, +1 totem and huge totem placement speed. At the same time, we get Ancestral Bone Keystone, and with 3 totems, we just breeze through the rest of the campaign. Don't forget to change other skills when going full totems, Wave of Conviction Mines, Self-Cast Stone Burst, and different links on Stone Brand because it doesn't do damage anymore. Let's just finish this section here. At level 38, when we get multiple totem supports, we can start using the double Decoy. And around level 55, we start using Arcane Cloak on left click mouse button. After first Ascendancy, I like taking Stun Immunity Keystone because in Act 5 monsters are really tough and any stun might lead to Rip. For the same reason, at the beginning of Act 5, I normally take Might of a Matter for bigger life pool, and some mana here to support it. Don't forget to remove Heralds and other auras that you use. Next, by the end of Act 5, we take the Sanctuary Wheel for 24 Old Res. This helps a lot with resist cap after Kitava kill. And then we go in the middle for more mana and life. Around level 55 we finish second Labyrinth and get Ritual of Awakening. Then we respect some points here for skill effect duration points and get 33% more damage this way. By the level 68 we got the second duration cluster and third Ascendancy points, Divine Guidance. On the next step I just jumped to level 87. At this point the life pool should already be big enough to not get stunned that much, so we remove Unwavering Stance and take some more life and mana and block chance. The Supreme Ego Keystone, we only take it if we got Essence Worm Ring. And here's the final level 94 tree. Now we can discuss why don't we go full crit with this build, because it should be more damage, right? Well, no, I don't think so, because on the left part of the tree there are only 3 clusters for spell crits, right here. But it's gonna be not enough crit chance and crit multi for it to be much better than Elemental Overload. So we have to go towards shadow part of the tree. But here's the problem, we don't have enough points to take skill effect duration clusters in the middle. And as I described in the skill section of the video, Stone Boss damage gets boosted a lot with that duration. So when going crits we will lose a lot of health, and the damage is not gonna be that much bigger. Now what about Soul Mantle Uniques package? Yes, there is an ultimate combo of 3 uniques for almost any totem build. Soul Mantle, Viridius Veil, and Self-Flagellation. If you use these uniques, you can get like 3 times more damage. But this way we'll lose big portion of health pool and elemental ailment immunity. It is gonna be harder to get resist cap and decent chaos resist. And in general, having that many uniques is not really SSF or League start friendly. That's why I didn't add this option to the guide. And just using Soul Mantle Self-Flagellation with Kikazaru or Crusader Crafted Rings is also a bad option, because that way we can't use an aura in Essence Worm Ring with Supreme Ego Keystone. And Soul Mantle got nerfed a second time. Now that we only summon 1 totem at a time, it is harder to get full set of curses on you for full damage buff from Self-Flagellation. Plus getting only 100% reduced effectiveness of curses doesn't make you fully immune to every curse in the game like it used to. Next topic would be, why no Fortify? This is a spell built with no attack speed and accuracy, and using shield charge plus Fortify feels horrible because of that. Sometimes you just have to slam your face in the enemy for like 2 seconds to get that 6-second Fortify buff. Another option is to use Vigilant Strike with the Vigil unique jewel, and we know it is gonna be nerfed in Ultimatum League, so the duration is not gonna be insane like before. So we'll have to refresh Fortify too often, and every time we come in melee range to enemies and slowly hit them, there's a higher risk of dying while doing that. And one more topic, why no Agnostic Keystone? The answer is simple, because we'll lose 2000 energy shield that way, and I don't feel like it is worth it. One last thing I wanted to mention is that Divine Ire skill has almost the same scaling mechanics as Stoneburst, except for the duration part. So if you really hate Stoneburst totems in maps, you can just swap the gem and clear maps with Divine Ire totems, and then use Stoneburst for tougher endgame bosses, because the damage of Stoneburst is still gonna be at least 2 times higher. Alright, so that was all I wanted to tell you about the build. And again, I like it so much. I played this build many times on League Start in SSF Hardcore and even in the last 2 Gauntlet races. And each time it performed very well. I really hope you will like it too. If you have any questions or ideas about the build, leave them in comments below or in chat on my Twitch stream, link is in description. And that's it for today, I'm Pantheon, and try to die less than your totems do.